Well, good morning. It's Friday morning. um, Today we're going to read just one verse, Romans 12:3. For by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. Wow. So, don't think of yourself more highly than you ought to. Think about that for a few seconds. Wow, it blows your mind. Have you ever met somebody who just thought of themselves as, they're superb in every way, practically perfect, as Mary Poppins would say? They know everything. They can advise you on everything. They're perfect at everything they do. They've never made a mistake. The old joke, I thought I was wrong. I thought I made a mistake once, but I was wrong. You meet these people and you think, what do we how do we deal with them? And Paul says, don't be like that. Don't think of yourself more highly than you ought to think. Another way of saying that is be humble. Take it down a notch, stop and think. You're not perfect. What are your limitations? What where can you get help for things? Um, One of the things that I recognized fairly early on in the ministry was that pastors tend to think they can do everything and anything. I was working in education programs as an associate pastor, and somebody suggested that we get somebody to teach something about something. And I thought, well, I can do that. Yeah, I could. I got a couple books. I could do a little research. I could put together something. Yeah, I got that. And then it hit me, why would I do that when there are actual experts available in the community who could come and do a superb job with that kind of lecture? Some years later, in another church, we had excuse me, local experts coming and really doing a fine job of talking to classes on difficult topics, um, which was good. But the tendency for the pastor is to think, well, I'm the local expert. I'm the reigning expert, so I'll take care of it. And so you find pastors lecturing on physics and biology, and they don't really know what they're talking about. Um, but it sounds good, so everybody nods. Our pastor said this: we all think of ourselves more highly than we ought to. Now, people do have different gifts. I think that's one of the things that Paul is going to get to in this next part of this chapter. Uh, and some people are gifted in particular things, and so we ought to listen to them. I'm thinking of our yearly mission trips to Maine and building a lot of things on people's houses and repairing things. And we'd frequently run into something that we amateurs thought we knew what to do, but let's ask Dan. He's the expert. Dan is a guy who was an engineer and who sort of made a second career out of this kind of mission work, and he knew how to do things. And so he would come up and he'd look at it and he'd go, yeah, put it like that. You're right. And with his imprimatur, so to speak, we would go forward. Or sometimes he would say, I've got a tool for that. There's always a tool, specialized, something to do something with, and he'd bring us the tool, and then we could get the work done. In fact, one of our jokes was, can you think of something that Dan doesn't have a tool for? So so in that case, he should have thought highly of himself as a builder because he was good. Um, but in a broader sense, we ought not all think of ourselves as experts when we're not, and that's something that we could just let soak in and think about that today because we're not as good at everything as we think we are, but we are good at some things, and so sort of identifying what you're good at and playing to your strengths. And not fretting about your weaknesses. Okay, you don't know how to cook a souffle the way the French people do. Let it slide. Don't try. Just cook your beans and be happy. Don't don't try to do things that you aren't gifted at doing, and don't think too highly of yourself. And I think if we can do that, then we remain humble, and we find that we actually we're happier. So take that today, and tomorrow we'll go into this business about all the gifts and everything. See you then.